Before everything went sideways, we had ourselves a pretty solid little team. Not flashy, not the kind of place that made headlines, but it worked. The office was like an old truck that always started, even in winter. Bit of rust, sure, a few quirks, but reliable. Folks showed up, got things done, had a laugh or two, and clocked out with their sanity mostly intact. Now, I wasn't the big boss, just one of the mid-level folks who knew how to keep the gears turning. People respected each other. If someone needed help, we pitched in. Birthdays got cake, folks brought in leftovers, and no one tried to outshine the sun. We had our grumbles, like any workplace, but overall, it was decent. Even the coffee machine behaved most days. But there was her. Name was Natalia. 35. On paper, she looked sharp, good education, long resume, the kind of person who always had the right buzzwords on hand. But under all that polish was someone meaner than a snake in a mailbox. I mean the type who could flash a smile while pushing you into traffic. She never liked anyone, and the feeling was mutual. Always found a way to twist a simple email into an accusation. You could sneeze wrong and she'd write you up for inappropriate respiratory conduct. She framed folks for mistakes they didn't make, hoarded information like a dragon with a grudge, and somehow always landed just right with the old boss, Mr. Pavlenko. Now Pavlenko, he wasn't a bad guy. Just one of those managers who couldn't smell smoke unless the fire alarm was howling. And Natalia? She played him like a fiddle. Brought him coffee, laughed at his tired jokes, always had his back in meetings. And little by little, she started getting closer to his chair. Then came the day Pavlenko announced he was retiring. We all figured someone from inside would take the reins. Maybe old Katia from logistics or Anton from procurement, people who knew the company, the culture, the crew. But nope. Pavlenko shocked us all with one name. Natalia. He said it with a grin like he'd just announced his daughter's engagement. She's young, dynamic, forward-thinking. She'll take this place into the future. Some of us exchanged glances. Others stared at the floor. No one said anything, but I swear you could feel the temperature drop. Natalia stepped up the next day like she'd been running the place for years. Called a meeting mandatory, of course, and told us all how excited she was to usher in a new era. Those were her exact words. Like we were going to Mars, not processing logistics forms and procurement requests. She stood at the head of the table, in her sharp navy blazer and blood-red lipstick, eyes sweeping the room like a hawk looking for field mice. There will be changes, she said. Big ones. And Lord, was that the truth? The first week under Natalia felt like walking across thin ice while someone behind you tapped it with a hammer. She started with small changes, tightened the dress code, rearranged desks, canceled flexible hours. Said she wanted to standardize things. But anyone who's ever worked in an office knows that's just corporate speak for control. And then came the morning we all remember clear as daylight. It was a Thursday. Sky outside was gray. Air had that weird heaviness like a storm was waiting to pounce. Natalia walked in wearing heels that clicked like gunshots and holding a folder that looked way too thick to be good news. She gathered everyone in the break room a pack tighter than a can of sardines. Most of us had coffee in hand, still hopeful maybe it was just another one of her alignment briefings. Then she dropped it. Effective immediately, she said, we're initiating a full departmental restructuring. Several roles are being reassessed for redundancy. Some of you will be contacted by HR today. No emotion. No thank yous. No explanations. Just a firing squad with better lighting. Anton was the first to go. 20 years at the company, the kind of guy who remembered your kid's birthday and brought in his mom's homemade pierogi for team potlucks. Walked out with a cardboard box, and that stun looked like someone had just unplugged his whole life. Then Katia. Then Layla. Then Victor from finance, who'd built the company's budget model from scratch and once saved our necks during an audit. By the end of the day, 7 people were gone. 7. Gone like they'd never been there at all. The rest of us stood around our desks in shock. No goodbyes, no cake, no speeches. Just silence and the smell of stale printer ink. The next day, Natalia came in bright and chipper, like she'd just spring-cleaned the house. Announced she was bringing in fresh perspectives, hand-picked folks she'd worked with before. Said they'd shake things up and infuse new energy into outdated systems. Well, that energy arrived all right. Loud, smug, and dumb as bricks. Her new team looked like they'd come straight out of a bad startup pitch. All jargon, no clue. One guy named Artem bragged about automating HR but couldn't explain how benefits worked. Another gal, Oksana, I think, spent her first week trying to figure out how the printer worked and still failed. Meanwhile, deadlines got missed, vendors were furious, and clients started dropping off like autumn leaves. But Natalia? She just smiled. Said it was all part of the transition curve. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone, laughing. "You have to burn the old wood," she said, "before new things can grow." What she didn't realize was she wasn't planting a garden. She was just setting fire to the barn. Week 3 under Natalia's rule, and the office felt like a haunted house. You know, all the familiar rooms were still there, but the warmth was gone. Nobody smiled unless she was looking. You couldn't trust a water cooler conversation. It might land you in a realignment chat, which was just code for pack your things. Now, her new hires? That crew came in like they owned the place. Didn't take long to figure out they were all either her old college pals or folks she worked with during a failed startup a few years back, the kind of operation that sold coffee mugs with slogans like "disrupt everything," but couldn't figure out how to pay their taxes. We called them the yes men. Not all men, mind you, but the term fit. They nodded at everything she said like dashboard bobbleheads. Strategy meeting? They'd praise her for breathing. Missed a major deadline? They blamed the old team. One of them even said, and I quote, "These legacy systems are holding us back," while pointing at an Excel sheet that literally had one formula. Meanwhile, the few of us left from the original crew, were doing our best just to keep the roof from caving in. I caught myself redoing junior-level reports at midnight, fixing errors from people getting paid more than me. One time I found a budget file that was so messed up, I swear it had negative percentages. I didn't even know that was possible. Clients were noticing, too. We started getting weird emails from long-timers, folks we'd worked with for years, asking if we were under new management or if they should start looking elsewhere. I wanted to reply, yes and yes, but instead I sent polite, "We appreciate your patience during our transition," notes, gritting my teeth the whole way through. Then came the big screw-up. A logistics contract, important one, brought in almost 30% of our annual revenue, got botched. Natalia's golden boy Artem forgot to process the renewal. Said he assumed it auto-updated. Now that's not just a mistake, that's grade A, roast on an open fire incompetence. The client bailed. Took their business to a competitor. We all felt the hit. Bonus structure collapsed, project schedules scrambled, and for the first time, Natalia looked rattled. But only for a second. The very next day, she called another town hall. She stood there like she was auditioning for a TED Talk, saying, "Loss is a part of growth, and sometimes we must shed skin to expand." I swear, if she'd used one more metaphor, I might have thrown a stapler. She ended the speech with this gem. "I know some of you are still adjusting, but if you can't evolve with the vision, maybe this isn't the place for you anymore." And just like that, the message was clear. Loyalty meant nothing. Experience? Worthless. You were either with her or in the way. That night, me and a couple of the old guard, Anya from admin and Dimitro from ops, we sat outside behind the building, passing around a flask like it was a war ration. We didn't say much, just stared up at the sky and let the silence speak for itself. The place we used to love? It was gone. And the new one? It was burning. It was around week 5 when folks stopped pretending everything was fine. We'd gone from minor grumbling to full-blown whisper campaigns. People were booking doctor appointments that conveniently lasted all afternoon. Sick days suddenly doubled. The coffee machine broke, and no one even put in a request to fix it. That thing had been a sacred relic for years. If it broke, someone usually started a GoFundMe. But now, we just let it sit there, like a tombstone for better times. Natalia, meanwhile, was still strutting around like nothing was wrong. She'd booked herself on some management podcast and recorded an episode called Leading Through Change. We listened to a clip during lunch. She used words like synergy, agile workflow, and disrupting comfort zones. Someone, I won't say who, tossed their sandwich at the speaker. Now here's where it got real interesting. The finance department, what was left of it, started noticing some oddities. Vendor payments delayed. Budget categories quietly ballooning. A few of the old-timers still had access to the shared accounting dashboard, and one day, a line item caught Dimitro's eye. External consulting, performance optimization package 42,000 UH. Problem was, none of us knew about any consultants. And when we asked Natalia, she brushed it off like a mosquito. That's above your clearance level. Focus on your deliverables. Now, I've been around the block a few times. When someone starts talking about clearance levels in a company with 40 employees, something's fishy. A few more pokes into the numbers, and we spotted it. Natalia had hired a consulting firm owned by her cousin. They weren't doing any real work, just sending invoices. We even found their report in a shared folder, a 12-page slideshow full of vague buzzwords and a single pie chart labeled engagement sentiment over time, which I'm 90% sure was just copy-pasted from Google Images. That's when the wheels started falling off. Our longtime logistics partner caught wind of the vendor payment delays and put us on hold. Orders froze. Clients got nervous. Projects backed up. That Friday, the systems team worked past midnight trying to patch the mess Natalia's crew had made with their fancy new process flows, which were about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. And then came the walkout. Anya, our admin queen, snapped. Right in the middle of Monday's team call. Natalia had just blamed legacy staff inertia for a missed shipment deadline when Anya unmuted herself and said, "You can't blame the map when you've been driving in circles with your eyes closed." She logged off, packed her desk, and walked straight out the front door. And wouldn't you know it? A few more followed by week's end. Folks who'd stuck it out for years. Gone. Not with a bang, not even a whimper. Just tired people who'd had enough. Natalia held a fireside chat that Friday. Called it an honest reflection session. No one spoke. Not even her yes men. They were too busy covering their tails. I remember sitting there, watching her fumble through her slides, realizing she was losing control. Not because people were fighting back, but because they stopped caring. And once that happens, you don't have a team. You've got a sinking ship, and no one's bailing water anymore. After the walkouts, I figured Natalia might stop and take a breath. Reflect. Maybe even realize she'd gutted the soul of the place and was standing in the ashes. But nah, that woman doubled down like she was holding a winning hand. "The old guard didn't align with our future," she said in a staff email. "It's time to build something new. Something stronger." Well, what she built was a monument to incompetence. Instead of hiring folks who actually understood the work, she brought in her people. And I mean that literally. Her cousin showed up one morning wearing a leather jacket and a Bluetooth headset like he was about to DJ a wedding. Claimed he had deep operations experience. Turned out he used to manage a vape shop. Then there was her former roommate, Alina. Ran HR now. First day on the job, she sent out a memo saying we could no longer use the phrase ASAP because it creates a culture of urgency. I just stared at the screen and whispered, "Lord, give me strength." She hired a guy named Vadim to oversee digital strategy. Said he was a tech genius. Day 1, he spent 3 hours trying to connect his laptop to the Wi-Fi. Day 2, he asked where the USB port was on his wireless mouse. Day 3, he told a client over Zoom that our cloud infrastructure was getting a soul upgrade. Whatever that means. Now, while this merry band of geniuses held brainstorming sessions about color-coded inboxes and posted motivational quotes in Slack, the rest of us were down in the trenches, trying to hold the walls up. Systems were breaking. Deadlines were slipping. Clients were ghosting us like a bad date. One of our biggest vendors, real salt-of-the-earth folks we'd worked with for years, stopped responding to emails. Turns out, Natalia's new procurement guy tried to renegotiate their contract by threatening to find someone cheaper on Fiverr. By Friday, the printer room smelled like burnt toner and despair. But you know what hit hardest? It wasn't just the work falling apart. It was the feeling, that sense of pride we used to have, that quiet satisfaction of being part of something that worked, even when no one noticed. Gone. Natalia still walked around like the queen of the castle, heels echoing on the linoleum like war drums. She held team meetings where she talked about redefining synergy and eliminating legacy mindset barriers. But no one was listening anymore. The last straw came the day she stood in front of us and said, with a straight face, "We're not failing, we're evolving." I looked around the room. Half the chairs were empty. The ones that weren't were filled with folks either terrified, exhausted, or updating their resumes under the table. Me? I just leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, and thought, you can evolve yourself straight into a job ad, lady. And I wasn't the only one thinking it. By the time week 8 rolled around, the place barely resembled the company I used to know. The folks who made it work were gone. The ones who replaced them were in over their heads, and Natalia? She still strutted around like she was building the next Google. She started holding these Friday morning culture syncs. Said it was to reconnect the team emotionally. Mostly it was her monologuing for 20 minutes while everyone fake smiled and nodded. I swear one guy actually fell asleep with his camera on. I respected that. That week, everything started unraveling. First, one of our biggest clients finally pulled the plug. Old partner, long relationship, handled their logistics for 5 years. Natalia had put one of her visionaries in charge of the account. Guy never returned their calls, sent the wrong invoices twice, and accidentally emailed them an internal memo titled, "What to Do When They Threaten to Leave." They left. That was a major account, gone in a puff of arrogance. Then IT had a total meltdown. Turns out, in her cost-cutting streamlining, Natalia had outsourced server maintenance to some budget firm in another time zone. Our internal system went down for 2 days. No one could access contracts, schedules, client info, nothing. You ever see grown professionals try to run an entire company through WhatsApp and handwritten notes? It was like watching a team of surgeons operate with soup spoons. But Natalia didn't panic. Nope. She blamed the legacy framework again. Said, "These breakdowns are expected as we enter our next stage of transformation. Lady, this ain't a butterfly cocoon. It's a dumpster fire." She kept scheduling more meetings. More updates. More speeches. All fluff, no fix. One of her new managers actually gave a 10-minute presentation on embracing failure as a friend. I nearly applauded when the projector shut off mid-sentence. And then came the cherry on top. On a Wednesday afternoon, she gathered what was left of the original crew, just 5 of us still hanging on, and said she wanted to offer us a choice. She sat there, all polished and confident, saying, "I know this transition hasn't been easy, and I respect your loyalty. But if you don't see yourself in the future of this company, now is the time to step aside." Translation: quit, or I'll find a way to shove you out. She offered us a soft exit package. 2 weeks' pay. No severance. No thank you. Just a handshake and a pat on the back. Now, some of the folks, they were tired. Bone tired. They took the offer, packed their things, and walked out with their dignity intact. Me? I smiled. I said I'd think about it. And then I spent the rest of the day updating every single client I still had connections with, giving them my personal email. Just in case, I said. You know how it is. By week's end, the phones were quieter. The office emptier. Natalia still smiled, still held her meetings, still said everything was on track. But behind the scenes, she was knee-deep in quicksand. And the worst part? She didn't even know she was sinking. So there we were, down to a skeleton crew and a company being run by Pinterest quotes and misplaced confidence. Clients were leaving, systems were cracking, and Natalia? She still walked in every morning like she was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award. But what she didn't realize, or maybe just refused to see, was that word gets around. Clients talk. Vendors gossip. And former employees? Oh, they really talk when they've been shoved out the door without a thank you. That's when the rumors started. Not the dramatic kind, the dangerous kind. Whispers that we weren't reliable anymore. That we couldn't meet deadlines. That our new leadership was a little erratic. And once the kind of talk starts, it spreads faster than free cake in the break room. Vendors started asking for upfront payments. One longtime partner sent a polite message. "We've enjoyed working with you, but our priorities are shifting." Translation: we don't trust you anymore. Now, while all this was unraveling, Natalia? She was busy. Not fixing the business, mind you. No, she was busy building what she called her executive culture hub. Basically, a fancy lounge in what used to be the storage room, complete with beanbags, a coffee bar, and one of those Himalayan salt lamps that looks like a glowing baked potato. Said it would inspire visionary thinking. What it inspired was the cleaning crew to ask, "What the hell is this?" Then came the best part. She tried to recruit back some of the people she fired. No kidding. Started emailing the folks she'd booted out just a few weeks earlier, offering them exciting opportunities to return in a refreshed organizational structure. One of Katia, bless her, screenshotted the email and posted it in a private group we all still used. Caption just said, "Did she hit her head?" Some folks ignored her. Others replied, flat out declined. But Natalia? She wasn't done. Next came the threats. Subtle at first. "I'd hate for bridges to be burned permanently," she wrote in one message. Then a little sharper, "If you share internal processes, there could be consequences." And finally, real desperate, "We're prepared to take legal action if defamation continues." Thing is, there was no defamation. Just screenshots. Her words. Her choices. Her mess. I heard from one guy who'd moved on to another firm. She sent him a legal-looking letter claiming he was violating a non-compete. He sent her a photo of him holding a beer on a beach with the caption, "Competing with what, exactly?" Meanwhile, her golden crew was falling apart. Maxim, the wellness director, quit after being asked to lead a quarterly budget review. Said the stress was damaging to his chakra flow. The cousin? Fired after mixing up 2 client orders and sending 12 crates of cleaning supplies to a fashion brand in Dnipro. And Alina, the HR queen, well, she just stopped showing up. Sent a resignation email that simply read, "No further alignment possible." And just like that, her dream team? Gone. She tried calling some of the rest of us into her office, all serious-like. "We have to rally together. Reset. Reinvent." I just looked her in the eye and said, "It's a little late for a reinvention, Natalia. This isn't a company anymore. It's a monument to bad decisions." She didn't say a word, just blinked. I think it was the first time she realized she'd lost control. Not because someone took it from her, but because nobody wanted to follow her anymore. The thing about collapse is, it doesn't always come with explosions and alarms. Sometimes, it's just a slow sinking, like watching an old pier slip under the tide, board by board, till there's nothing left but ripples. That's exactly how Natalia's reign ended. Quiet. See, after her dream team jumped ship, she tried to tighten the screws. Daily check-ins. Performance reports. Passive-aggressive emails with smiley faces that read more like threats. She even brought in a morale consultant, some guy in tight pants and tortoiseshell glasses who walked around asking people how they felt about their productivity journey. I told him I felt like quitting. He said that was a powerful share. Anyway, one morning, she sent out an all-hands email, subject line, "The turnaround starts today." Said we'd be returning to fundamentals. That trust and accountability would be our new pillars. Said she was forming a core council of advisors. Want to guess who was on it? Yep, just her. She had a vision all right. Just no one left to see it with her. That week, our second largest client pulled out. No warning. Just a formal notice and a refund demand. They'd had enough of the delays, the disorganization, the revolving door of clueless reps. When the refund hit the books, I saw the look on Natalia's face. First time I'd seen real panic behind a lipstick smile. She locked herself in her office for hours. Next thing we knew, she canceled 3 meetings, shut down the lounge she'd built, and started asking us what we thought should be done. You know it's bad when the dictator starts taking surveys. She tried calling me in for a one-on-one. Said she valued my insight. Asked if I'd consider stepping into a leadership role to help right the ship. I asked her, "Why me, now?" She said, "Because you've been here through it all. You understand what makes this place work." And I'll be honest, for about 5 seconds, I thought about it. Maybe I could fix things. Maybe if I got in there, kicked out the rest of the rot, brought back the old crew. But then I remembered the looks on their faces when she fired them. I remembered the late nights fixing mistakes I didn't make. I remembered how she laughed in that first meeting when she told us, "Some of you won't be part of the future." So I leaned back in the chair, looked her square in the eye, and said, "Natalia, you fired the future." I stood up, walked out, left her sitting there with her vision board and her regrets. A week later, she made one last desperate move, sent out an offer to a dozen ex-employees. More money, flexible hours, even promises of bonuses. Not one of them took it. Some didn't even reply. And that, my friend, is how it ended. No press release. No grand collapse. Just a woman in an empty office, wondering where everybody went. A few days after I turned down Natalia's offer, things went real quiet around the office. Like graveyard quiet. No emails. No meetings. Even the copier stopped making that wheezy noise it used to, like even it had given up. There were only 6 of us left by then. 6 out of what used to be 40. The walls echoed. Hallways felt longer. Even the lights seemed dimmer. Might have been my imagination, but it was like the building itself knew it was dying. Natalia stopped holding meetings. Stopped making speeches. She started showing up later and later, makeup not quite as sharp, hair pulled back in a way that said I don't have time for this anymore. And then she started calling people. One by one, the old crew started getting messages again. Only this time, the tone had changed. Less smug, more desperate. "We've made space for your return. We can offer better compensation. Let's rebuild together." She even called Katia at home. Personally. Said she'd reconsidered her management style and was ready to listen. Katia told her, "You should have listened before you lit the match." Hung up. She called Dimitro next. Left him 3 voicemails, each more pleading than the last. The 4th message was a threat. "If you continue sharing internal details, we may need to escalate this legally." That's when the rest of us still in the office started getting nervous. Not scared, mind you, just wary. A leader swinging between begging and blackmail is like a horse with a limp and a temper, unpredictable and likely to buck. Then she tried a new tactic, public sympathy. Posted a long note on LinkedIn. One of those overly sincere, word-soupy confessions filled with buzzwords and half-truths. Claimed she'd inherited a broken team and had tried her best to build something meaningful, but had been undermined by legacy resistance and internal sabotage. Called it a tough lesson in leadership. Thing is, people weren't buying it. One of the ex-employees left a single comment. "You don't get to set fire to the house and then blame the furniture." That post disappeared within the hour. Then, and I kid you not, Natalia started showing up to former employees' new workplaces, popping in under the guise of catching up or exploring collaboration. Half apology, half sales pitch. Most folks just walked out of the room when she arrived. Some even had security escort her out. And me? Well, I stayed. Not for her, but because I wanted to see how it would end. And sure enough, it was coming fast. Invoices weren't getting paid. Vendors stopped calling. Even the janitorial service cut ties, said they no longer felt comfortable servicing the premises. That was a new one for me. I've heard of a lot of resignations, but never a mop bucket walking away from a job. One morning, I showed up to find the lobby plants gone. Reception desk empty. Even the company logo had been peeled off the wall. All that remained was Natalia, still sitting in that corner office, sipping coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. She looked at me as I passed her door, tried to smile, and said, "You're still here." I just nodded. Didn't say anything. Didn't have to. She knew. I came in one Monday morning, and the building was locked. No warning, no email, no farewell memo from Natalia full of empty metaphors, just a padlock on the front doors and a handwritten sign that said, "Temporarily closed for restructuring." Yeah, right? I stood there for a minute, hands in my pockets, when tugging at my jacket. Thought about all the years, the people, the laughs, the late nights, the potlucks, the arguments over staplers and who stole whose mug. Gone now. That afternoon, a few of us met up at the little cafe down the street. Me, Dimitro, Katia, Anya, even Vadim from IT, the one who used to program like he was defusing bombs. Everyone looked a little older, a little worn out, but there were real smiles this time. Someone bought a round of drinks, middle of the day. We didn't care. We started swapping stories. Not the bitter ones, not anymore. The good stuff. The weird client requests. That time we had to process invoices during a blackout. The company Halloween party where the CEO came dressed as a spreadsheet. It felt good. Like digging through the attic and finding a box of memories you forgot you'd packed away. And Natalia? Well, last I heard, she tried to launch some consulting thing. Transformational strategy services, or something like that. Made a flashy website. Quoted herself on the front page. I checked it out once. It had stock photos of business people high-fiving in conference rooms. Lasted about 2 months before the site went down. Rumor has it she reached out to one of our ex-clients, tried to pitch herself as a turnaround expert. They laughed her off the call. Poetic, in a way. As for me, I moved on. Took a job at a smaller outfit, family-run, steady, no beanbags or buzzwords. They don't have a vision board, but they've got something better, common sense and respect. And when I walked in on day one, you know what the boss said. "Hey, we're glad to have you." That was it. Not, "Let's reinvent the wheel." Not, "Disrupt your own habits." Just glad to have you. Made me realize something. All Natalia ever wanted was control. But leadership? That ain't about control. It's about trust. About making people want to follow you, not forcing them to. She never got that. And by the time she realized what she'd lost, it was too late. You don't get to burn bridges and then expect folks to carry water for you when your house catches fire. So yeah, it all ended. But not for me. I walked out of that wreckage lighter than I'd felt in years. No bitterness. No hard feelings. Just the quiet satisfaction of having survived something dumb, learned from it, and kept walking. And that, friend, that's more than enough for me.